The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. We are continuing in our series, Shaped for Greatness. And if you didn't catch yesterday, we were talking about abilities that God has given us. Those are a little bit different than spiritual gifts. In fact, they're quite a bit different than spiritual gifts. So if you haven't caught that, catch up on that a little bit. That was from this past Sunday's message. And also from this past Sunday's message is the letter P, which is personality. Pastor Rob is here, and we're going to talk about how God has shaped us with our personalities. Welcome in.
Thank you. Good to be here. Yeah, so we're just kind of walking through this whole acronym, and we're all almost to the end of it. The letter P is personality. Another way, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about personality, and we're going to talk about personal style. And our personality affects our personal style. When we're talking about personal style, we're talking about how we relate to the world and people. But personality is fun, and first we'll talk about that. Personality is our characteristic pattern of behavior and thought. So your personality is not who you are, but it's how we act and react in most situations. Mm-hmm. And our personality answers the question, well, let me say this. Spiritual gift answers the question, what I do. My passions answer where I do it. My abilities answer. You can't say that. It's hard. Words are hard. What am I?
Abilities?
Abilities talks about what I do also, kind of like our spiritual gifts. And then our personality answers the question, how I do it, right?
Okay.
So how I do it. And it's really interesting. And before we talk more about personalities, there's all kinds of tests out there. I'll refer to one of them here in a minute. But it's interesting in that all these different personality tests that are out there, when you talk about personality, I think that Jesus was 100% all of them. Like he could be 100% all of them. You and I are not. We're primarily one of those maybe four sides of the personality. And then, so we have a primary, a dominant, and then a secondary one. Jesus was all four. One of the cool things about marriage is you marry somebody and they're usually the opposite of you. And together you make a more complete person than just having one person. But personalities are really interesting. And when we talk about, someone might say, well, where does this talk about personality in the Bible? Well, interestingly, in Psalm 139, verse 13, David says, you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Most of the time when we read that verse, we're thinking about physically, that God put us together physically. Sure. And he is talking about that. But he also says, for you created my inmost being. If you look up the word inmost in Hebrew, it refers to kidneys. And so a literal translation might say, you created my kidneys.
Sure.
But what's interesting is that it's not what he means. In the ancient world, where we talk about our heart being the thing that motivates us and it's the seat of our emotions and passions, in the ancient world, the kidneys were that. Right? So it was that. So what he's basically saying is that you created my passions and my heart and the seat of my emotions and where I determine morality and those kinds of things. And so it's where people discern right from wrong, where they learn to interact with the world around them. And so it's just a reminder that God didn't just create us physically. He did create these other parts of us, our soul and our emotions and our personality and how we interact and react with the world.
Okay.
So the personality, what our personality does is primarily our personality influences the way that we relate to and interact with people and the world around us. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about one particular personality test. It's the DISC, D-I-S-C. And it's a great person. It's the one I like the most. And when I use it with staff and people, it's the best one. And it basically breaks down into four different personality traits. And the D stands for dominance, the I stands for influence, the S stands for steadiness, and the C stands for conscientiousness. And so basically, primarily, they're psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever they say, there's these four primary ones. So the D-I-S-C, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientious. You are primarily one of those, and then you have a secondary one. So, most people are pretty high on one, the secondary, then the other two, they're a little bit lower on. I did some work on personality stuff a long time ago and read a book about, it's called Connections, using your personality to draw parents and kids together. And it made some comparisons between the DISC survey and animals.
Okay.
And so the D, which was the dominant personality, which was kind of daring, adventurous, direct and demanding, decisive, results-oriented, all that, compared it to the lion. So there's the lion personality. The I, which is an influence, is enthusiastic, influential, impulsive, emotional, gregarious, trusting of others, very people-oriented, social, kind of like the life of the party. The animal that it compared that to was the otter, and you can see that, right? And
sure.
they look like they're having a lot of fun all the time and don't care about anything else. Then there's the letter S, which stands for steadiness, and this is a person who's patient and loyal and deliberate, a team person, serene. They're not very demonstrative or whatever. They're just steady, right? And this the animal that this was compared to was a retriever, like your golden retrievers, like. They're loyal, steady. They're always there for you. That your man's best friend kind of deal. And then the letter C is conscientiousness, which is somebody who maybe has a perfectionist tendency. They're accurate, fact-finding, diplomatic, systematic, cautious, careful, those kind of things. And the animal that compared that personality trait to was the beaver. So you have the lion. You can just kind of imagine the traits of a lion, and that's the personality.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
otter, which is influential and kind of the life of the party thing. The retriever, which is just good and steady, and then the beaver, which is hardworking, conscientious, not going to, building all the time, working, that kind of thing. So these are important to know and understand, and it's important to know and understand because your personality is connected to your personal style of ministry. So how you relate to the world and other people also affects how you do ministry, and your personal style is connected to how you prefer to serve, and again connected to your personality. And we said this in the episode yesterday that most of the time we can do anything. Like you set a task before somebody, they can do it, right?
Right.
But they may not prefer to do it. And if you're doing a task that you can do but you don't prefer to do, what happens is it drains you, and you're not energetic about it, and you're not passionate about it, and you're not excited about it. And so personal style is connected to trying to help you find what you prefer to do, how you prefer to interact with people, how you prefer to interact with the world. And there are two questions that help you discern what your personal style is. And the first question is, how are you energized? Like, what energizes you? In the notes I said on Sunday, and I got a lot of this stuff from other ministry resources. I put it together, and I could just say this: I've never had an original thought in my life, so I'm telling you things that I've learned, right? But how you're energized, and most of us are energized by one of two things: by either accomplishing tasks or being with people. So you have people who are task-oriented or people-oriented. So a task-oriented person is somebody who's energized by doing things, accomplishing tasks, working with people who share the same commitment. Like a task-oriented person loves to mark off things off the list, right? Like, I see this, it needs to be done, I'm going to get it done. And they could do it with or without people, but the focus is the task. People-oriented people who are energized by being with people, they're energized by relationships, interacting with people, working with people in a team setting. They could accomplish a lot, or they could be like, we'll get it done tomorrow. Let's just be together, kind of hang out, kind of thing. So there's the people-oriented thing. So we are all energized a little bit more by one of those than the other, probably. There might be a person who's like, oh, I do both, and I do both, but I'm like more oriented toward one than the other. And also sometimes the setting changes and it makes it different as well. But there's so the first question is, how are you energized? Are you energized by getting things done or by being with people? And then the next question is, how are you organized? So there's how are you energized and how are you organized? And so when it comes to organization, most of us are either structured or we're unstructured, right? If you're structured, you like things in files. If you're unstructured, you like things in piles, right? It just doesn't, that's just kind of how it goes, right? So unstructured people are less concerned with being precise. They prefer lots of options and flexibility. They prefer a variety of activities. They're comfortable in undefined situations, like they like spontaneous relationships. An unstructured person would be great if you hired them and didn't give them a job description, but said just get the job done, they'd be great. A structured person would say, what's the job description? I want to see it. I want to know what you expect. So a structured person is like planning and bringing order to their lives. They enjoy stable, consistent relationships. They make decisions and seek closure. They're more detailed. They like things clearly defined. And chances are you're more one than the other, right? I mean, there are times if you're unstructured, that maybe you operate that way. There are times you have to be structured.
Sure.
But if you had your druthers all the time, I'm one or the other, right? So you have, how am I energized? And that is by tasks or people. And how am I organized? By being unstructured or structured.
We're excited about those of you interested in learning more about church membership and what that's all about. We will have a membership class Wednesday, May 29th. If you are considering coming, drop an email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know so we can get some information out to you.
So here's an interesting. I don't know what you might be, or if you're listening, what you are. But chances are you're like one of the. You're one more one than the other in both of those categories. So here's a couple of cautions in defining who you are, what you are, and that is to think that if people aren't like you, that they're wrong or that there's something wrong with them. And the truth is, like, even when it comes to personality and personal style, there's no wrong personality. There's no wrong personal style. They're all good. They're all helpful. And the right one is the one that you are, right? You don't have to be someone that you're not, because God created you this way, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that he created you to be a slob if you're unstructured or whatever. And there are things you have to do, because the next caution is that when we think about our personal style, it explains our behavior, but it's not an excuse. It doesn't excuse our behavior.
Sure.
So it explains how I operate, how I think, but it doesn't excuse it. In other words, like if I'm unstructured, it doesn't make it okay for me to be late to meetings or make people wait, or to not get my work done, or to turn it in a way that only I can
And say, oh well, I'm just unstructured.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So on Sunday we did this little exercise, and you can kind of think this through in your mind. But when you write your name, usually if you're right-handed, you write with your right hand. If you're left-handed, you write with your left hand. So the exercise would be to take a pen or pencil in your hand and write your name with the opposite hand that you usually use. And chances are you could do it. You could write it.
Sure.
It probably wouldn't be as nice as the way that you do it with your correct hand, or your dominant hand, maybe. but you could do it, right? But it wasn't natural. And so when you write your name with your correct hand or your natural hand, it's easy and natural. And serving is the same way. When I'm serving in my personal style, it's going to be easy and natural for me. When I'm serving outside my style, I can do it. You can do it. We can make it happen.
Right.
But I'm not maximizing my strengths, and it's not helping me to be efficient. And the reason this is important is because when I serve in my personal style, it maximizes my strengths and makes me more efficient. So when I'm serving in my personal style, I have more authentic relationships because I'm able to be myself. If I'm doing something that's not natural for me or not in my personal style, I might do it, but I might be doing it while I'm gritting my teeth, while I'm defiant on the inside, or I'm not comfortable doing it, or I'm out of my comfort zone or whatever, and I'm not authentic in my relationships. Also, if I serve in my personal style, I have an increased motivation because I'm enjoying it. I'm doing what I like and what I love, right? And then I also, if I'm doing it that way, it's going to decrease burnout. So finding your personal style is really important because there's a lot of benefits of serving within your personal style. And one of the things that we did Sunday, and if you weren't here Sunday, you can still do this, is we give an assessment for you to determine what your personal style is. And you basically take a box, and you have task at the top, people at the bottom, how you're energized. And then on one side, the other side of the box, you have unstructured and structured, how you're organized. And you answer a series of questions, and then you put a dot. There's a chart. You put your dot there, and you can see whether you're task energized and unstructured as you're organized, or task structured or people unstructured or people structured. And this is important. And let me give you an example of how this is important. Let's say that I am task unstructured. Let's say I'm task unstructured, right? And someone comes to me and says, "Hey, can you lead a small group Bible study?" And so my gifts, maybe say, I'm just making all this up.
All
my
right.
gifts are that I like teaching, right? And it's my ability, and I'm passionate about the Word of God or whatever. And the person comes and says, "Can you lead a small group?" And for me, this isn't the real me, but for me, then if I'm not people oriented, and I'm not structure oriented, you're asking me to show up at the same time, all the time, and lead the same people in a structured way with a Bible study that you're giving me, right? So if I'm task unstructured and you're asking me to do a people structured thing, I can do it, but it's not my thing. It's not my preference, right? So maybe what I would do is, if I'm task unstructured, a good thing for me to do would be that on my own, when I have time, I would write Bible studies for people to take to do it on their own. So I'm unstructured. I do it when I want or when I can, and it's not focused on people. It's focused on the task. But I'm still doing exactly what I've been. I still have a passion for the Word of God. I'm using my gift to teach and all that kind of stuff. And so you can see how finding your personal style can help you choose the specific ministry that's going to energize you and not deplete you.
And I suppose when you're saying that, just like with personality types, we may end up having a bias towards our own personality type.
Yeah.
Like if which when you were going through theirs, the thing that kept reoccurring in my mind is, I really want my family to take this on my behalf and tell me what they think I am.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that would be.
But when we are maybe, like you said, task unstructured, but somebody else is people structured, they might be on kind of opposite ends of the spectrum and think that the other person is wrong. I wish they would do this way, because we kind of see the world through the lens of our own eyes.
Yeah. But a person, if you're wise, right, you would see that as a compliment to you. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, in the real world, and I'm talking about real now, Tim Swanson is probably people structured. I am task unstructured. And we're opposites in a lot of things, but we make a good team because everything gets covered. And so I'm just guessing that's what Tim is based on my experience. I have not seen his results of his tests, so this is all speculation on my part. But I think I'm pretty close to right. But there's value in that. It's the same in marriages. It's the same in work relationships. It's the same in staff relationships, or even in small groups when you're working together, or classes. It's good to know those things. And so yeah, you're right. If I have an immature view of things and think everybody has to be like me, then it's going to be a negative thing. But if I'm like, man, I need people around me who are not like me to be on the team, because they fill in my weaknesses and my gaps, and I can fill in as a strength for them. It rounds everybody out. And so it's really interesting. But I think that what I would really encourage you to do is to take the assessment. You can get it online at our website, chepnaz.org, or you can get it from the app, or we'll have copies of it here at the church as well. And take it and find out what you are. I mean, you're probably not going to learn anything like new about yourself, but it's going to affirm or reaffirm what you are. And then at the end of this thing, we're going to create a shaped profile where you'll be talking about your spiritual gifts, identifying what your passions are, identifying your abilities, identifying your personal style. And then the next step we're going to talk about is our experiences, because God uses them as well. And then we're going to create a profile that will help you maybe say, this is where I could serve. This is where I can see myself serving. Or maybe this is what I see God doing in my life when I step back and look at it from a high view. Maybe this is how God has shaped me this way. So this is a ministry that I can start, or I should start, or I could find one that already exists and be a part of it. And that's the whole idea behind this thing. And then also to be serving in your strengths, in your gift, in your passions, into your personal style, and it's fulfilling. And it's so fulfilling when you're doing what you know you're supposed to do. So yeah. And then let me just plug one other thing that's coming up at the church. On Sunday, June 2nd, we're going to have a ministry expo. And so what we're going to do is just make everyone aware of the places there are to serve in the church and opportunities. You can meet leaders of different ministries in the church and find out what what opportunities there are to serve with them, and again, get plugged in. And again, I keep saying this because I want to make sure you hear it. This isn't about filling in the gaps in the church, although we have gaps and we need you to do. It's about serving inside the church, but also outside the church. What is God calling you to do so that you can make your contribution for the kingdom of God and fulfill the reason that He shaped you the way He did.
Amen. Well, you've heard it here. We do have a ministry expo coming up on Sunday, June 2nd. And we want to encourage you to take the most recent assessment for the personality and find out kind of what your tendencies are and how that's part of how God has shaped you. So go to shepnaz.org to do that. You could also find that on the mobile app. And when you get done with that, you can hop over to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to find out what's going on there with us as well.
Yep.
For Pastor Rob, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.